Greetings and welcome to our show. You're watching This Is My Health, a show that prides itself in disseminating useful health information. And our only aim is to help you to claim your health so that you may, with us, say, This is my health. I'm going to be responsible for it. I'm going to make responsible choices, informed choices. In this season, we are still talking HIV/AIDS, infectious diseases, and sexually transmitted diseases. You know, many times we don't spend enough time talking about reproductive health to the extent that our children, our young people, all the information that they have on reproductive health and their sexuality is what they get from anywhere else except from the people who should be responsible enough to tell them something that they can identify with. One of the issues that has become now under threat is the issue of virginity. I have a doctor to come and help me unpack this, and I'm hoping that he will at least help us from the medical side. Doc, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please have a seat. Thank you for coming to join me at Cafe. This is my health.
Thank you very much.
What would you like to have?
May I please have fruit salad, please?
You also would like some fruits. Okay, but fruit salad. Yes, Taiwo, I think they will give you that. I know you, but my audience don't know you.
All right. I'm Dr. Batusi Matuba here in Gaborone, Botswana. I work at a private facility called Lobone Clinic.
Yes.
And before that, I used to work at an adolescent center, pediatric and adolescent center, dealing primarily with HIV.
Yes.
So, yes.
That's
now,
fine. Thank you very much.
Coming to the question,
yes.
What is virginity? I think the word virginity, we like breaking down things. It's coming from virgin. Virgin basically means someone who's not had sex before. And virginity is the concept that someone has never had sex since they were born. There are other words that can be used around the same topic, words like celibacy. It's different from virginity in the sense that virginity gives the connotation that from birth someone hasn't engaged in sexual activity, whereas celibacy could be from a certain point in time, where someone says, I've been celibate maybe for the past 2 years or whatever the case may be.
Okay. No, thank you very much for that elaborate explanation. Now, I'm glad that you said you have worked with the adolescent centers and the like. Where you were working, at what age the people that you were working with, would you say on average people lost their virginity?
It's quite a broad range. It's quite a broad range, mainly because of the family dynamics. It used to be certain things that culturally it was expected that you are supposed to wait till you are married. But since the modern age, we see very varying family dynamics, and people tend to engage in sexual activity at different ages. I had someone who was about 15 when she fell pregnant. So we started talking about their sexual encounter from as early as 15 years. There are those who unfortunately were abused.
Yeah, because that's kind of different.
Yeah.
I think I'm looking more at people voluntarily deciding that I want to be sexually active.
Yes. So we noticed majority were around their early 20s. We had quite a fair bit around their late teens, from 17, 18, 19. That's where we started seeing a surge that there's people who are starting to engage. But like I said, we've had isolated cases of those who were
So what do you think drives this thing? Because you seem to be grouping, and I've looked at some researches from other places, and it seems that that age from 17 to about 20, all around the world, that's about the time when people become sexually active. What is driving that? That is about that age that people start to be sexually active, whether or not they are married nowadays.
All right. So when we look at the current trends, there is a lot of pressure from the media. There is a lot of pressure from friends, because the narrative is that uh, sex is fun, sex is something worth being explored. The narrative out there is that once you are old enough to feel autonomous over your body, you can do whatever you want. That's the narrative that is being pushed into our people, both our young boys and our young girls. And this mindset then pushes people to say, when I finish my high school, which is around 17 years. Now I am free to engage. And there's actually where people talk about breaking their virginity at prom. So when they
Those are scary stuff, yes.
finish their high school, that celebration that I'm moving from high school, there is actually cases where we notice that a lot of young people will then have this prom date and actually break their virginity. It, it's more like saying we are now free, we are now adults, we can do whatever we want. So it's the culture and the media that we find ourselves dealing with this issue
Yes.
of more and more people engaging earlier on in sexual activity as compared to maybe a generation or two ago.
Yes. Now, as a clinician, what are the challenges of somebody engaging in sex when their body is still that young and is not fully mature?
All right. So one of the challenges with adolescence is that there is a lot of hormones coming in. From around about age 12, 13, when puberty starts, sexual hormones start coming in and people having all these feelings that they had not experienced before. Now, that tricks the body into thinking, because I feel it, then I can do it. And then the body actually has not, in the same manner, developed enough. Let's take a few examples. One of the things we notice with early sexual debut or early sexual activity is that people tend to become more prone later on to cervical cancer.
Yes.
And the reason being, as you engage in sexual activity, there is a part in the cervix where the tissue, there is a part where we call it the transition zone. The tissue on one side is different from the tissue. So that area is still very fragile. And it's still relatively towards the outside early on in life. And it moves further deep as someone ages.
Yes.
So while it's still at that fragile part of the cervix is
It's
still
more exposed on the outside,
and they
yes.
engage in sex, that's where a lot of bacteria, viruses go and lodge there, and they cause a lot of damage, which ultimately makes someone prone to cervical cancer.
And we know that cervical cancer actually, most of the cases, is actually due to infection.
Yes. Almost all cases, let's put it that way,
Yes.
almost all cases of cervical cancer are associated with an infection called human papilloma virus.
Yes.
So the virus goes there, it sits there, and it causes the cells to behave in an awkward manner. And then we can pick that up. We have different things like pap smears that can help us pick those changes, and ultimately lead to cervical cancer. So the first and biggest thing is the threat of cancer.
Yes.
Then we also have what we probably know, risks of other sexually transmitted diseases.
Yes.
I know most people nowadays say, well, there are barriers that people can use. There are condoms, there's that people can use. But we tend to think of the STIs or sexually transmitted diseases that come from secretions. There are those that come with contact, HPV being one of them. Things like pubic lice. People don't talk about those things, but it's things that are there.
I think I'm going to call you back just to come and talk about sexually transmitted infections.
All right.
You know?
Yes.
Yes.
So we'll maybe have on a different setting to talk more about sexually transmitted.
Yes.
But that's a real threat that is there. We also have things like teenage pregnancy, things that already the body is still developing.
Yes.
And
it's not
now
ready for
it's burdened by having to take care of another body that will be developing inside. So that puts the younger the pregnancy, the more the threat of complications happening to the mother. So teenage pregnancy, sexually transmitted diseases, and there's a huge issue that we see later on, the psychological
Yes, I was going to be coming to
of,
that to say, you know, this is the physical.
of,
What about the mind?
of what happens when someone is still in their teens. Their mind is still at that stage where the brain probably thinks faster than the body can act, and there's that huge transition. But the maturity, the processing ability of an individual at that stage is not yet ready to deal with all the consequences
yes.
that come.
Yeah.
We see a lot of people living with depression that might have been triggered by failure to cope because of stress, because of anxiety, because of the guilt and the shame that they experience early on,
yes.
and that predisposes someone to more risky taking behaviors later on.
So we're going to hold it right there because we are going to go for a short break. When we come back, I want us to continue unpacking that issue of the emotional side of sex at a certain age. Please don't go away. You really want to hear more of what the doctor has to say. We'll be right back. Welcome back. If you're only joining us now, we are watching This Is My Health, and today we are looking at a very interesting question. Is virginity still relevant? Before we went off for the break, we are in the studio with Dr. Matuba, and he has been outlining and unpacking a number of issues that are relating to early involvement or indulgence in sexual activity before the body is ready for that. Welcome, Dr. Matuba.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, when we cut off, you were trying to now help us understand the psychological side. We had gone a little bit into the physical side. I don't know if you are done. If you want to touch anything else on the physical before we get onto the psychological side of sex.
Maybe just to point out that when we are talking about the physical, I had gone on to talk about things like pregnancy, things like infection, cervical cancer, STIs. Then there's actually the physical trauma itself. The physical trauma itself. Virginity has always been celebrated by the fact that the hymen is still intact. And there's that element of pain when the hymen is broken. The younger the body is, the less tolerated it is of pain. And also other things, like one of the things we've seen particularly with HIV is that most of the people who got HIV were people from 15 to 24 years.
Yeah, we are seeing that actually right now.
In that age group. And there was one study that showed that most of them actually get the virus from men aged 25 to 45. So one of the challenges that you have is an adult, fully grown adult male having sex with a 15-year-old. The potential of trauma is great. So the pelvic structures can actually get damaged and hurt in the process.
You know, it's good you say that because, as we have said, with the TV and the pop culture out there, it seems to project sex as this glorious thing and this thing that everybody has to experience. And somehow they seem to forget the part of the pain.
Yes.
That it actually may not be all that is prepped up to be, that there is pain that can be experienced in there, especially by the girl.
There is pain. From a medical point of view, we have a word for pain during sex. I hardly ever ask men if they have pain during sex. It's something I ask the ladies.
Yes.
Because it affects them the most, definitely. Now, you were talking about the pop culture, the culture that we find ourselves in, the culture where sex is commercialized, sex is popularized, and let us use that as a link to go into the psyche, the mental aspect of it, to say there's this thing about disappointment. Disappointment never comes without expectation.
Yes.
And the media is creating a certain expectation
of how sex
of
should
what
be.
sex is. And that might actually, and in most cases, it doesn't turn out to be what
it was
prepped
to be. Yes.
Prepped. And this leads to a lot of disgruntlement, disillusionment, and ultimately it causes even sometimes low self-esteem, because someone might actually be wondering, if sex is this great thing that everyone is talking about, and maybe I'm not experiencing it the
Why am I
way
not getting that greatness myself?
exactly. And there's something about sex that does well with commitment. Something that does well with commitment, particularly for the female. And if someone starts having sex at 15, 16, 17, 18,
There is no commitment.
the likelihood of commitment in that kind of relationship is usually very
Yes.
low. So it predisposes someone to actually having a lot of mental, psychological problems as a result of that.
And when you are saying that, it makes me wonder if it wouldn't also predispose somebody to multiple relationships, because they may be that, well, it wasn't me, it was that person, and then try with the next one. That might be an explanation why we are seeing so many people with having had so many different relationships.
Yes. Uh, the issues around multiple concurrent relationships, or sometimes it's not even multiple concurrent, it's multiple serial relationships, where someone is in a relationship and then they skip to the next one and they skip to the next one. It's multifactorial. One of the issues that is there is delinquency earlier on in life can actually lead to that. Abuse earlier on in life.
Yes.
But that dissatisfaction that comes, or that curiosity of saying, if X is not giving me the
thing
desire
that was set up
I
to
was
say I should
expecting,
be,
maybe
yes.
I should try it with Y. And then with Z, and then with A, and so on
You are
and so
looking
forth.
for a phantom in the air. That's
Exactly.
not coming. But you said
So-
it comes with commitment.
Yes.
But this person is not committing to any one person. It's just moving from one to another.
Definitely.
Yes.
So that's something that we see. And obviously, like we said, there are other factors that probably may also be at play into all this. Now, one of the things that I want to be quick to point out, remember when we started, we pointed out that we are talking about virginity.
Yes.
Virginity, we usually recommend, or it's recommended that people should wait till they get married to engage in sexual activity. And I want to highlight that there might be cultures out there that marry people at 9, 10, 11
Yes.
In order to celebrate that they married them as virgins or as early as possible.
Yes.
We actually, from a medical point of view, discourage that kind of practice.
Because the body, like you said,
like we said, the body
yes.
is not ready. So we should not just be chasing after
The wedding
the
marriage.
wedding part of it and not the health part of it.
I'm glad that you bring that up, because sometimes we hear of young people saying our parents won't allow this, and at church they say we can't have sex until we are married, but we feel we are ready. So 14, 15-year-olds run off to get married so that they can bypass the law.
Yes.
On that one. So it's a good point that.
So we need to be cautious to say, you point out that from the church's perspective, we recommend that people should wait till they get married to engage in sexual activity. That will, one, make sure it minimizes multiple concurrent or serial relationships. It also minimizes the likelihood that someone might actually find themselves jumping from one person to the other because we are not in a committed relationship. And it also minimizes other things that tend to come with. Nowadays, we have other sexual practices that come. Gayism, lesbianism, and all other forms of sex.
And some of them probably because of experimenting.
That comes usually early on. Someone says, I want to explore my body, I want to do this and that, and they actually tend to put themselves at risk. We all know that HIV initially was prevalent when it started among men who were having sex with men, and they still remain a group that is high risk,
group of concern,
group of high concern or high risk, because of the nature of the membranes that become involved in the sexual act.
Yes.
So we want to encourage our viewers to say, let us look or make it a point that we have this discussion at our homes with our children, and encourage them to wait till they are married at the right age.
At the right age,
to their partners, to be able to have and access this blessing of sex.
I think I like that you are calling that a blessing, because sometimes young people also are saying, parents and adults, they want to deny us from having something that they are, it's like you are enjoying something there that you don't want us to access. And sometimes there are those that want to give the impression that sex is bad, it's a bad thing. I'm glad you used the word a blessing. Yes. From a Christian perspective, what is sex?
Yes, so from a Christian point of view, we remember that God created all the animals and He created Adam. And then after all that, He said, it is not good for men to be alone. And God had something in mind. We are told that He created Eve to be a companion, a helpmate, someone they would share life together. And God married them. God brought them together. And later on, Jesus says, for this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother, the closest relations, and things with her. Now, in marriage, there are a few things that come to the fore. The first thing is sex. Once people are married, they can engage in sex, and it's beautiful. Like you said, people tend to think that sex is just a bad thing. God created it to be this wonderful thing. It's a symbol of the intimacy He wants to have with people, and that is symbolized by sex in the marital relationship. And then we see God creating marriage in the context of having sex. So there is this order of someone who's ready, someone who's married, someone who has this beautiful thing called sex. You mentioned something like people or young people feel like they are denied. It's not that people are denied. It's that we are encouraging that you should have the best thing at the best time.
Yes, you can't be getting something that's uncooked, because then you may not enjoy it fully, and it looks like a bad thing.
There's a phrase that I like, even good things at the bad time become bad things.
Yes.
So sex, no matter how good, how beautiful, how wonderful it is, if it's not done in the right context, can actually become a curse rather than a blessing.
I think I like that.
God had meant it to be.
I like that you are saying that, because we find out that sex has become a tool for abuse. Can you talk just in a minute around how sex has been abused so much and has become a real tool for violence?
If we backtrack, you look at the wars that used to be there in history. One of the tools that was done was rape. When there is a war,
and it's not in history, even today it's still there.
When a war was waged, the women were raped. One as a form of control, two as a form of they wanted to bring in genes or the other, whatever it was in the history. But sex was seen as something that could be used as a tool because of the impact it has on the mindset. So it was used to capture and bring in that force, that fear, that pain. And then we see sex also booming as an industry, pornography and the other sex-related work, because of the edge and the drive that it has also on the mind. So it can capture the body and actually easily become addictive because of the way in which it affects our mental setup and dopamine production and other related. And then
those are hormones that are produced during sex, right?
Those are hormones that are produced during sex or during anything that is quite exciting or thrilling or fulfilling. So in the right proportions, that's fine. But when you now tend to manipulate the system or have it in excess or all those things, it actually changes how the brain perceives joy, perceives pleasure and other forms. So sex can actually be something that is quite used for harm rather than actually being used.
Can you imagine that our time has gone? Totally gone. Yes. Can you just have just a minute to summarize or say a parting shot? Remember, the question here was, is virginity still relevant? And after going through all of this and unpacking the issue of sex, the body, all these things, what then is your answer to the question?
My answer is virginity is still relevant. It's a blessing that both the man child and the woman child need to take it upon themselves to enjoy that when they do get married, they are both virgins, both the man child and the female child. So it's a blessing that I believe they should take. Two, there are a lot of consequences
Your time is actually up. Yes.
that come
Yes.
because of early sexual debut and sex outside of the marriage setup. So to avoid all those, I would say let us espouse virginity.
Virginity.
Those who probably have started, it's never too late to
To
go on
go for the
celibacy.
celibacy. Okay. Thank you very much, Doc. I can see that we need more time, but I promise you, you are going to come back, at least discuss the sexually transmitted infections that you didn't get to get into. I hope you will come
I would
when you
appreciate that.
Yes. Thank you very much for watching today, and I hope you got to learn something. Yes, the answer to the question is a resounding yes. Virginity is still to be espoused, not for anything else but for your own personal benefit. It is a personal issue. It's a personal decision. It's not about your parents. It's not about your friends. It's not about the culture or society you live in. It's about your body, preserving your body. Remember, there is cancer out there that comes through early sexual debut. There is HIV out there. There is pregnancy out there. There are so many other problems that can come. But don't just be running away from problems. There is yourself, your self-esteem, knowing that you're in control of your own body. If you are going to say, this is my health, say also, this is my body. I'm going to keep it pure. I'm going to keep it the way that I would like it to be, because I'm the one that is in control of my body. God bless you as you make this difficult decision. You young people who are still virgins, try as much as possible to keep that. Until next time, this is my health. Stay there.